So I bought my first rangefinder camera. I always aspired to a certain few cameras. I think a lot of beginner film photographers do. You know, the Hasselblad X-Pan, the M3. You know, these sort of legendary cameras. And I noticed that a lot of them are rangefinders, and I'd never shot on a rangefinder, so I bought one. Not as expensive as those ones, luckily, but you know, a nice little camera. The Prins 35mm EE. I got it to sort of be a travel vlog, environmental street sort of camera. I don't really know how to describe it, but you know what I mean, right? That sort of shoot what you see camera. So to emulate a summer away with friends shooting on the camera, I tested out in London in November when it was cold and alone. When I was home before I left, I tried loading up some HV5, which went badly. There was, various quirks of the camera, like the fact that it needed to be closed to advance the film. So I was loading up, advancing the film, and it was just coming off the spool. It was an absolute nightmare. I did end up loading off camera, so sorry you don't get to see that. But yeah, I was very stressed by that. That gave me massive anxiety. I planned a whole day out. I bought this camera, and I was in the morning filming, getting ready to go, and then I just couldn't load my first roll of film, and I was like, oh god, my day's ruined. Once I arrived on the mean streets of London, I went over to Oxford Street, which is the least mean street of London there ever is, and I tried my hand at some street photography. I'd never done street photography before. I mean, I'd taken photos of people, and I'd taken photos of cities, and there are people in cities, but I'd never gone out purposely to take photos of people in the city. So I gave that a go on black and white. I have to say the camera performed really well. The focusing ring is a bit sticky, it's a bit stiff, but I just did sort of zone focusing and none of the photos really came out wrong. There are a few photos that I was actually really happy with on the black and white of people and sort of street kind of stuff, but I really need to get better at the photography elements of that. You know, I wasn't asking people to take their portraits, I wasn't talking to anyone, I wasn't waiting at locations to frame up a good spot. I didn't really explore and find cool areas of light. I kind of disappointed myself in that regard. But in terms of the camera performed really well, and I'm really happy with it. Some of the shots on the black and white kind of came out a bit strange with this sort of marking, and I assume it was some sort of film advance issue. It didn't happen on any other rolls, so I assume it was something to do with the way that I loaded it with that struggle at the beginning, but it seemed fine in the end, so whatever. Once that roll was finished, I loaded up some C41 color, some Fuji Superior 400, and headed out and did a bit more street stuff, a bit more sort of environmental stuff. It was my first time shooting this film as well, and it's quite sort of chunky is how I would describe the film. It's got quite harsh colours, quite contrasty compared to sort of Portrait and a lot of the Kodak stocks. It was halfway through this roll of Superior that I realised I was very stupid. I knew that already that I was pretty stupid, but this roll of Superior told me that I was really stupid. Because halfway through this roll I realised that on a rangefinder camera, there's a frame in the viewfinder, which is actually what frames the shot, that the whole viewfinder isn't the frame. And I'm kind of embarrassed even talking about this and telling anyone that I had this mistake, because it's so obvious when you look through a rangefinder that there's a frame and that's the frame of the camera. Anyway, I was surprised with how little the black and white shots were affected, because the whole roll of black and white I was shooting thinking that the whole viewfinder was the frame, and so there's only a few of the black and white shots that really show my stupidity, but on the Superior there were a few shots that you can just tell that I was off to one side and shooting sideways. Yeah, not ideal. I loaded up a third roll. It was also C41 color. I loaded up some Portrait 800. It's quite an expensive film stock to be putting in a test roll, but it was all I had on me and I felt like shooting more that day, so I put it in. A weird quirk of the camera is that it only rates up to 500 ISO, which I found strange, but I just rated it 500 because, I generally overexpose by a stop anyway when I'm shooting fully manual, so on an auto exposure, rating it 500 is fine. Once I got to Hyde Park, the light was pretty much gone. I'd left it too late, which slightly depressed me, but I tried not to get too down on myself. And so I went on and I was shooting just sort of everything around me. This is where I tried out some more of the travel style photography, a bit wider, a bit more vista, a bit more view based. And I was really happy with how the camera performed. I was shooting across the lake in Hyde Park at the sort of fairground, and that was a really nice composition. And I kind of, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I wish I had my telephoto because I could get a great shot with this, with the telephoto. But when I got the results back on the little prints, I was really happy. It had so much atmosphere and mood, and even in the quite low light, because there's a lot of sky in the frame and a lot of water that's reflecting a lot of light, the metering just sort of exposed for them, and it was fine. It didn't have motion blur, it wasn't doing super long shutter exposures, so I was really happy with how the camera performed in this situation. And as it got darker and darker, it still continued to perform, which is really impressive to me. The last composition that I took photos of was as I was walking back towards the bus. There was this building with sort of lights on and some trees around it, and there was no other building sort of in the frame when you were looking up at it, and I was really happy with that. And so I thought, well, I've got sort of 5 or 6 shots left. Let's take them all of this one building from different angles and see what it's like exploring a single subject, which was really fun. My first impressions of the camera are, I really like it. I enjoyed shooting on it, and the metering was good. The focusing was sharp, even though the focus ring was a bit stiff, but I kind of just zone focused and it was fine. I didn't really think about focus. I basically thought, am I really close? Am I quite close? Or am I super far away? And I just focused to those 3 distances. I think if I had to be very reactionary, if I saw something really cool that was like coming towards me, and I take a photo of it quickly, I would struggle. But that's gonna happen not that much, especially with the kind of photography that I like to do. There were almost no shots that were ruined by the camera, which is, if anyone shoots, old analog cameras, it's surprising when all the shots come back well, there's no light leaks, there's no major problems. And so I was really impressed with the camera and how it performed. The only problem with the photos was my photography skills, which are much worse than I thought I was. So that's a bit depressing. My only qualm with the camera is its build quality. I think it's a bit mediocre. I was winding back my Portrait 800 and the whole wind crank came off the camera, and I was like, oh God. I managed to screw it back on and continue winding back, and it seems to have worked fine, and it hasn't come off since, but still, like, everything feels a little bit loose. There's no sort of tight mechanics. So yeah, the build quality isn't great, but it performed well. It didn't actually cause any problems, so it's not a big detriment to it. The photos were great. It was really fun to shoot on. It was small and discreet. I really don't have many other negative to say about it apart from the build quality. I need to get better at street photography, so expect to see hopefully more videos of me doing some street stuff in the future, because I really love the look of it and I love doing it. I loved being out in London shooting photos, but I need to get more confident with my street photography and getting better at the photography elements of it rather than just testing out a new camera. So I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a lovely rest of your day.